And off we go again. I'll see you in 30 seconds with a little countdown, and let's do some weather. Good afternoon, everybody. Scott Stevens here with a look at some weather across at least this continent, but we'll start at another. First of all, this being the Americas, but we'll go alphabetically. And well, I guess America would still be first, but let's go to Australia first because, that's just the way I have it set up over there. And it looks like it's going to be a rather dry week. They've got a few showers, a few mostly on the outer perimeters of the nation because that inside portion is just an amazing outback, an incredibly beautiful desert, but a desert nonetheless. And this is the anticipated forecast future from, of course, the American GFS model, forecast model. I don't know if the Aussies have one, or they just, let's just say there's enough data sharing between different agencies that we can all get our forecast from somewhere. Because the Europeans have a very nice suite of data. The Americans is okay. And there's got to be other solutions out there as well. Of course, the Canadians have a little bit. Hey, Vicky, Robin, and a little bit of the gang showing up. But let's go over to some tweets as they kind of look ahead and reviewed some of the weekend that has just ended from Weather Zone. If you want to follow them over on Twitter, they always have kind of nice insights, and in fact, do a little bit of about a 90-second weather gig every day, and it's worthy of a shout out. A little snow to slow to build up this season as it is winter down under, but the Alps have had a little better coverage at the end of this last week, as they've got a little snow, and that's kind of the coverage there. Let's see if clicking on that I actually did us a favor instead of just doing us a little more harm. But those are some of the ranges. Melbourne down in this direction, so some of those Alps, as they are called, those taller mountains in the southeastern part of the continent. Coming on down, thunderstorms were widespread across southwest Australia on Sunday night, with over 50,000 lightning strikes detected within just 100 kilometers of Perth, or about 62 miles if you're in the metro, in the English system. Full story is there at the Bitly, and of course, what would be a lightning story without a picture of a lightning strike? And they've been some pretty amazing ones lately. Some of them I've shared with you, and others not so much. Those wet and windy winter nights might feel like the coldest time of the year, but did you know? Did you know the coldest temperatures on record actually occur on clear, calm nights? It's because we can get that cold air condensing and settling out right against the ground with radiative cooling. Cooling is the greatest at that particular time. Let's close that baby off and let's come to the other stories. What I want to start with, being an aviation junkie like I am, the 747 COVID has had its way with it. And Boeing more than likely to shut down a 50-year run of that particular airframe and that particular design. There have been stretches, extensions, re-engines, and new electronics on the flight decks and so forth over the last 50 years, but nonetheless, the need for the 747 appears to be drawing to a close, and likely the curse is right here and right here. It's 4 engines. There was a time where if you were to do what's called extended overwater operations, you had to have 4 engines, at a minimum 3 engines. And that's why the DC-10 was such a workhorse for a time, is because you would still have 1 engine out. You could have 1 engine that you could get back to a landing field within a certain amount of time, like 60 minutes or 120 minutes or 180 minutes. And now they've extended some of these 787 and 777 Boeing aircraft, and even the Airbus fleet of planes. They've extended them for 6 hours, so they can have a flame out over the South Pacific. And permission-wise, you could still get that plane back to land within a 6-hour period of time. But if you lose both engines, then it's sink or swim time. So the end of the 747 appears to be upon us, and it has been a workhorse. It has been a profit center for Boeing and has been repurposed Air Force One, and then a lot of freighters have been used out of that 747 airframe. All right, looking at how the random likes show up on the feed. Good looking shelf cloud and a small storm moving through northwestern uh, county. I think this is South Dakota, or probably South. Oh, Starkville, Mississippi. Oh, that's why I couldn't get that out. Southern Mississippi with a nice little shelf cloud is showing up. And then we've been watching the Gulf of Mexico. Another area of spin is developing along the old front of the northeast Gulf of Mexico. There exists a small chance that this could become a tropical depression before moving into the Florida Panhandle later on tonight, and that was last evening. It doesn't have enough time to produce more than just some showers or some gusty winds, and indeed, we've got a pretty good looking radar of that, and that's down here just a little bit more. All right, Ben Knoll issuing his kind of insights towards what the European medium range forecast model, they'll run it out maybe 3 months just to like throwing a trial balloon up to see what the model kicks back, and it's signaling weak La Nina conditions, Atlantic ACE, and that's tropical energy. That's the energy available in the tropical Atlantic to provide fuel, support, develop hurricanes, tropical storms. So that energy is up by 1/5, and that's no small number. Unseasonably warm fall for the United States, a La Nina pattern like developing towards the latter part of the year, wetter than normal in India, Australia, and the Arabian Peninsula, drier than normal in Chile, South Africa, and the equatorial Pacific. And that's kind of the map. If you want into that, that's Ben Knoll. If you want to go find him on Ben Knoll Weather. And then kind of a COVID story in here, basically saying that Florida is the situation that New York was 2 months ago when they were dealing with 10,000 cases a day. And Florida at the time was dealing with sub 1,000 counts, and now they've blown up, and New York is down. And so it's just kind of a reminder that we've had this mark before, just in another location up the coast. All right, good morning, world, says NOAA Satellites. That goes east is watching tropical storm Edouard, and it's way up here, already in the northern latitudes in the northern Atlantic, and moving over much, much cooler water. So at best, it can inject its heat, its humidity, its storms into the jet stream, which would then take it either to Iceland, over to the northern UK, and then absorbed into the flow from that. We're watching in an area way south of the Antilles, and then, of course, the Gulf of Mexico with just one little thing. And one more little Peleus cloud, a little cloud shelf. We looked at those a couple of days back. And then this is something that I'm going to get into. I'm going to click this after when I'm actually done with the show. Help us map the force around us at CrowdMag. Heading outside, use CrowdMag to measure the magnetic data along your path. Join a worldwide community of citizen scientists and help fill in the gap in the global magnetic models. This is something I got into about 15 years ago when we put magnetometers literally under thunderstorms. And we could get the magnetometer because a thunderstorm is nothing more than a massive rotating electrical vortex. And as we begin to see changes happening within the Earth's magnetic field by default, and there's been very little research done about this, there will be an impact on severe weather. And indeed, it is my speculation that some of the weird weather we are seeing ties into the Earth's changing and flexible magnetic field. This relationship must be understood better. The Europeans launched a fleet of satellites, swarm as they're called, circling the Earth, and they've already found big anomalies over the South Atlantic and also over Siberia. And the plan was basically to watch the poles go through their movement. This is not something that we've witnessed before. All right, and here is that little bit of the circulation. I don't know whether, let's just zoom in the whole page. There it is, kind of rotating in. This was last evening. In fact, it was about 7 o'clock Mountain Time on the last frame on this, so this came ashore late last night, that little circulation. And then here we are, the last night, the tropical storm Edouard formed in the Atlantic, becoming the earliest fifth named storm in history. So that kind of winds up the tropics. We'll get back to that, as that is going to be an issue as we move into the season. All right, a little review of the previous 5 days. Where has it been above normal? Where has it been a little bit below normal? The west and northwest cooler than normal. The heat has been in the far central Atlantic portion of Canada, north of Hudson Bay, the Great Lakes states in northeast through western Ontario and Manitoba. Everywhere else, a little bit cooler or just slightly above normal, but nothing too exceptional in that regard. Temperatures on the hour, 90s in Nebraska, 90s and some 80s where we've had some thunderstorms a little bit cooler as we get south of Dallas, and then still along the Rio Grande, it's hot, and that extends all the way into the southern portions of Arizona, through the deep southwest, lower Colorado River Valley, and of course the Central Valley of California, but not as hot as it has been. What caught my eye when I first loaded this map this morning was southern Michigan. I believe it was Bay City was running 90 degrees I believe it was 9 o'clock my time, so between 10 and 11 o'clock Eastern and Central, they're already busting on that 90-degree mark, so plenty warm there. And warm enough maybe to spark a few thunder showers, but nothing exceptional, nothing out of the ordinary. The rain, the upper Mississippi Valley and the high plains of Montana, the spine of the Rockies through Colorado, New Mexico, and then of course along the Gulf Coast where the water is supremely available. The dew points are crazy high, and it is just sticky and uncomfortable as can be. But if you can get a rain to take the temperature back from, like, say, 88 to 82 degrees, even if you have to endure the humidity, then an evening on the porch is not the worst thing to have to put up with. This is where we're seeing the showers and thunderstorms. I want to throw the warnings to see what we have as far as warnings in play. It looks like some up in Wisconsin, just north of Omaha, south of Sioux Falls, and so forth. We've got some in that direction. Also, green indicating flood issues down in the Pennsylvania, eastern Pennsylvania, lower New York State, the Delmarva region, so even in and around Cincinnati, Ohio. So we've got some big, slow-moving wet storms there. The circulation from the southeast really kind of struggling to hang on. It's there, but it's over terrain now. And when you've got hills and valleys and, well, mountains-ish for, I'm in Colorado. These are just kind of like glorified green hills. But that's enough to slow down the train that this circulation may have, had it been a little bit flatter, wanted to go to. All right, the next couple of days, who's over here? Who's over here? Donnie, good to see you on board, man. Tomorrow, come what may, Tracy Wilson, woman of the future, no doubt. Yeah, you do. I would love to see some of the weather down in Australia. That kind of has me intrigued in so many ways, and just the unique geography of that continent has got me curious. And someday, I trust that I'll get out there. Yeah, because your perch overlooking that Gold Coast is kind of exceptional. So I'll trust one of these days you'll share something just pretty spectacular with us. All right, back to the forecast where we see the yellow hash. Thunderstorms, big thunderstorms possible from eastern Montana all the way through the northern lakes. And then, of course, we've got a weak dying front just draped along the Gulf Coast, and that is guaranteed to keep those folks on the wet side. As we move out a day or two, the front of the Gulf kind of dies out, but the risk of the severe weather moves in towards Minnesota. The northwest dries out and honestly stays probably the most comfortable of just about everywhere. Locations at risk of record highs today: Tucson at 108, Dalhart, Texas at 105. Nothing in store for tomorrow, Wednesday. Maybe some heat at Colorado Springs at a record high at about 96. That would be one shy. And then on Thursday, we kind of throw it out there to ROW. That'd be Roswell, New Mexico, and in the Key West area at about 94. But as we get to next weekend, the heat is going to build across the Southern Plains states, and that is probably the news. Is the hot weather that will develop over the middle part of the nation. And as we look at 6 to 10 days, the likelihood of that greater than normal heat is absolutely bullseye over western Texas, and it's going to be dry as well, because once you get the whole profile of the atmosphere warm, we need to have kind of like a cool layer in there for the heat to kind of break through and then begin to build up from, and that just doesn't look like that's going to happen. So we'll see that Texas and Oklahoma continue to dry out. What's concerning for me is it's already in, especially West Texas, in kind of drought situations, as is southeastern Colorado. So if we're to be, best case scenario, we end up with thunderstorms along the Rockies, and hope that they are wet thunderstorms and not necessarily ones that are just lightning producers and then cause that risk of fire. Otherwise, we're going to really, really stretch the firefighters as we move through July with the heat that looks like it's kind of settling in. All right, guys, yeah, the energetic field has a direct impact on weather. Let me pop that up so I can actually read it in a larger text. As I recall, you published a paper on magnetic fields change of soils, the pH of soils, help determine the rotation of dust devils. Believe it or not, negative or positive Earth impact on dust devils. Will the magnetic field create giant storms and giant lightning? Is this similar science? I would have to say that it is. When you see something and observe something on the small scale, because the principles at work on that smaller scale, it will work on the larger scale. It's at work there too. You just have to find the parameters and set up an experiment and go to work. And then hopefully not let your biases taint the investigation or your observation. All right, always hot here for Christmas Eve. Bless your heart. Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Summer, hot. All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for the evening. Thanks for stopping by. If you come across some crazy stories, send them on this way, and we'll share them. All right, thanks for stopping in. I'm Scott Stevens. We'll look at Scott's weather, and we'll catch you tomorrow doing this again. Otherwise, it'll be Vicky's Coffee Break Show at 11 o'clock Mountain tomorrow morning. Take care, everybody. Keep looking up.